I was the poster boy for hustle culture burnout, the kind who literally worked himself into an early grave. And then I woke up, back on my wedding night, with my Ice Queen CEO of a wife. In my first life, I've been obsessed with proving myself. I launched a startup, ran myself ragged, and ended up with nothing but debt, dragging her down with me. This time I was done. I was tired. All I wanted to do was cling to my billionaire wife's leg and enjoy the quiet life of a trophy husband. So can someone please tell me why, the second I decided to coast, she started looking at me like she was actually interested? Ding dong. The doorbell. I jolted, springing up from the six-figure Italian sofa that was hell on my lower back. She was here. My wife, Catherine Reed, a name straight out of a romance novel, attached to a woman who had the resume to match. Billionaire heiress, drop-dead gorgeous, and about as warm as a glacier. I rubbed my sweaty palms on my pants, took a deep breath, and went to open the door. Catherine stood there in an impeccably tailored black pantsuit, her long hair swept back in a severe, elegant bun. Her face was a mask of neutrality. She gave me a slight nod, her eyes lingering for half a second on my wrinkled t-shirt and board shorts before flicking away. "You're back," I said, stretching my mouth into what I hoped was my best, most harmless, trophy husband-in-training smile. She hummed, sweeping past me and into the living room. Her stilettos clicked against the marble floor like a metronome, precise and relentless. I trailed behind her like a puppy. "Did you eat?" "I got us. Delivery." I pointed to the insulated bags on the coffee table, still giving off a faint warmth. In my first life, desperate to show her my value as a partner, I tried to learn how to cook. The result? I nearly burned down the penthouse twice and gave her food poisoning that landed her in the ER. This time around, I understood the importance of staying in my lane. Cooking was a job for professionals. Catherine's stride faltered. She turned to look at me, and for a fleeting moment, I saw something unreadable flicker in those cool gray eyes. "You didn't cook?" "Nope," I said, with the conviction of a man who'd learned his lesson. "I like you better outside of hospital." The air went still. I could feel the mood shifting into strange, uncharted territory. She just stared at me, silent. It was starting to freak me out. Was the takeout not fancy enough? "It's from that new private kitchen," I added quickly. "The one run by that Michelin 3-star chef who went solo. You usually have to book a month out." I'd had a call and a favor from my past life just to get this slot. I might be committed to being a slacker, but there were professional standards to uphold. If I wanted to secure my cushy lifestyle, I had to keep the billionaire happy. Catherine's lips parted slightly, but in the end, all she said was a quiet, "I see." Then she sat at the dining table and opened the containers. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding and sat down across from her. We ate in total silence, the only sound the soft clink of silverware. That suffocating quiet used to be my greatest fear. I was always scrambling to fill it, to find some topic of conversation that would prove our marriage wasn't a complete sham. But now I was content to just be a quiet, well-fed freeloader. After we finished, I quickly gathered the disposable containers and dumped them in the trash. "Easy." Catherine had migrated to the couch and was looking over some documents. I settled into the armchair next to her, flicking on the TV and turning it to some mind-numbing business channel. So, I cleared my throat, getting ready to make it official. "Catherine, there's something I want to talk to you about." She looked up from her papers. I met her gaze, speaking each word with the gravity of a life-altering decision. "I've made up my mind," I said. "I'm not launching the startup. I'm checking out." I watched her face, waiting for the explosion. In our first life, my fragile male ego was the bomb that blew up our marriage. We were a merger of families, and everyone whispered that I was a gold digger who'd only married her for the Reed family money. I was so desperate to prove them wrong, to prove I was worthy of her. I took the seed money she gave me and dove headfirst into the startup grinder. I wanted to show the world that Ethan Miller was no freeloader. Instead, I proved I was an idiot. The company went bankrupt, I was drowning in debt, and Catherine had to sacrifice a cornerstone project to bail me out, crippling her own company in the process. The shame and stress of it all eventually killed me. An aneurysm, the doctor said, a classic case of overwork. It was only on my deathbed that I finally got it. I wasn't a visionary. I was just a guy who should have stayed home and enjoyed the view. Why suffer to prove a point you can't even make? So this time I was enlightened. I was ready to be the best damn trophy husband this city had ever seen. Catherine listened to my declaration without a single twitch of her facial muscles. Why? She asked simply. Because I realized I'm just not cut out for it, I said with a shrug, laying on the sincerity. I'm not a titan of industry. I'm a guy who's good at chilling. The whole CEO thing is way too stressful for me. I leaned forward, my eyes wide and earnest. So, from now on, I'm relying on you. And I promise, I'll hold up my end of the bargain. I'll be the perfect husband. No drama. No cheating. No embarrassing you in public. Catherine stared at me. For a long, long time. So long I thought she was about to call security and have me thrown out for being so shamelessly lazy. But instead, she closed the folder, set it on the table, and stood up. Suit yourself. With those 2 words, she turned and walked upstairs. I was left sitting there, completely baffled. Suit myself? That's it? No jilling? No contemptuous glare? No lecture about my lack of ambition? This wasn't in the script. Based on my first run-through, she was supposed to fix me with that icy stare and say, Ethan, I expected my husband to be a man who could stand on his own 2 feet, not a parasite. Even though she still gave me the money last time, those words had haunted me for a decade. I scratched my head, trying to make sense of it. Did I get reborn wrong? Or was it possible that this version of Catherine Reed wasn't the same one I'd married before? The next day, I woke up whenever I felt like it. Sunlight streamed through a gap in the blackout curtains, painting a golden slash across the floor. I stretched, feeling a profound sense of satisfaction in my loosened joints. No alarm clock, no early meetings, no soul-crushing spreadsheets. This was the life. I shuffled downstairs in my slippers. Catherine was already gone, but on the kitchen island sat a perfect sandwich and a glass of milk, still cool from the fridge. Next to it was a sticky note. Her handwriting was just like her. Sharp, precise, and leaving no room for argument. Eat breakfast. I took a bite of the sandwich. It was actually good. Apparently, my declaration of professional uselessness hadn't prompted her to give up on me entirely. A good sign. After breakfast, I collapsed onto the sofa and began to plan my new, ambition-free existence. Morning, video games. Afternoon, movies. Evening, wait for the wife to come home, have a nice dinner. Perfect. I pulled out my phone, ready to download a few new games, when an unknown number called. I answered. A slick, oily voice oozed through the receiver. Ethan, my man. It's Rick. Big Rick Donaldson. Big Rick? It took me a second to place the name. Then it hit me. He was my first business partner from my past life. The smiling shark who'd taken my seed money and vanished. He was the one who, with a beautifully crafted PowerPoint deck full of lies, had walked away with my first round of funding, never to be seen again. My hand tightened on the phone. My voice went flat. What do you want? Rick, oblivious, was still in full sales pitch mode. Hey, you didn't forget, did you? We were supposed to meet today to talk about that green tech venture. I'm telling you, Ethan, this thing's a rocket ship. We get in now, and in 3 years, you'll be the talk of the town. No one will be calling you a kept man then. Huh? The same old lines. I almost laughed. Sorry, Rick, I cut him off. I'm out. What? His voice jumped an octave. You can't be serious, man. We had a deal. I'm serious, I said calmly. I've decided to retire from the whole startup game. But why? He sounded genuinely panicked now. This is a golden opportunity. Because, I paused for effect, savoring the words, my wife's loaded. I've decided to embrace the lifestyle. I hung up before he could respond. Then I blocked his number and deleted his contact info. One smooth, satisfying motion. The world felt cleaner. I let out a long sigh, feeling a weight lift from my chest. That $5 million he'd scammed me out of. It was Catherine's money, but it had been my failure. A thorn in my side for years. This time, I wasn't falling for it. Feeling fantastic, I started humming to myself and switched on the TV. It was tuned to some talking head business show. The host was fawning over a man in a crisp suit. I recognized him immediately. Leo Vance, my college nemesis, and, in my past life, my biggest business rival. He came from money, had talent, and was the kind of guy parents loved to compare their own kids to. Next to him, I'd always felt like a second-rate clown. In my first life, his aggressive market tactics were a big part of why my company went under so quickly. And now here he was on TV, beaming with success. Mr. Vance, We hear you're launching a new project. Can you give our viewers a little teaser? The host asked. Leo flashed a toothy, camera-ready smile. It's a new venture in the AI space. I believe it's the future of the industry. I looked at his smug, punchable face and snorted. Yeah, it was the future. Too bad he picked the wrong horse. I might have been a failure as a founder, but I'd learned a few things. I knew that Leo's big project, the one that looked so impressive on paper, was a money pit. The specific technological approach he was banking on would be obsolete in 3 years. In my first life, he'd leveraged everything he had to fund it and nearly ended up bankrupt. Thinking about it now, a little sliver of schadenfreude worked its way through me. Serves you right, you jerk. Enjoy the ride down. I changed the channel, not wanting to look at his triumphant face a second longer. That afternoon, I binged a trilogy of action movies as planned. Just as evening approached, my phone rang. It was Catherine. She sounded tired. There's a gala tonight. You're coming with me. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. I blinked. A gala? I hated those things. A room full of fake people in masks, trading meaningless pleasantries. It was exhausting. In my first life, I'd attended every single one, desperate to network. This time, I just want to be a vegetable. Why did I have to go? Do I have to? I asked meekly. A few seconds of silence on the other end. Yes. Her voice was iron. Why? Because you're my husband. That again. I sighed. Fine. Husbandly duties. Beggars can't be choosers, especially when the beggar is sleeping on $1,000 duvet. Okay, I conceded. What time? 6. The driver will be there to pick you up. After hanging up, I groaned and peeled myself off the sofa to get dressed. So much for the easy life. The walk-in closet was lined with rows of brand new suits, all picked out by Catherine, each costing more than my first car. Last time, I would have spent an hour choosing the perfect one, trying to look respectable enough to stand beside her. Today, I couldn't care less. I grabbed the plainest black suit I could find and put it on. I checked myself in the mirror. Looked like I was headed to a funeral. Perfect. At 6 sharp, the driver was waiting downstairs. I got in, and the car glided silently toward a 5-star hotel downtown. When I arrived, Catherine wasn't there yet. I found a quiet corner, grabbed a glass of champagne, and watched the parade of business elites. I recognized a few faces. In my past life, I'd spent countless humiliating hours trying to get 5 minutes of their time. They'd call me Mr. Miller to my face and praise my ambition, then turn around and laugh about Catherine Reed's pathetic freeloader of a husband. As I was reminiscing, a familiar figure headed my way. Leo Vance. He was also in a black suit, his hair slicked back, a glass of red wine in his hand, and that signature fake smile plastered on his face. Ethan. He approached, feigning surprise with a raised eyebrow. Fancy seeing you here. I didn't bother responding. All by yourself? He asked, knowing full well what the answer was. Where's the esteemed Mrs. Reed? Not here yet, I said flatly. Ah, he drew the word out, dripping with condescension. Of course, a busy woman like her. Not like the rest of us with time on our hands. He leaned in, lowering his voice. I heard you gave up on the startup. I met his gaze. News travels fast. I did, I admitted without hesitation. He seemed taken aback by my frankness. Why? As I recall, you used to be quite the ambitious one. Can you eat ambition? I shot back. My wife has more money than God. Why should I kill myself working? Leo's smile froze on his face. He'd clearly expected shame or bitterness. All he got was breezy acceptance. He seemed to be searching for an insult, but came up empty. Finally, he just sneered. Ethan, I really misjudged you. I thought you had at least a little pride. I never thought you'd be so content being a trophy husband. What's wrong with that? I looked him right in the eye and grinned. It's only embarrassing if you're not good at it. Leo's face turned a blotchy red. I was done with him. I turned to walk away, but just then, a murmur went through the crowd near the entrance. I glanced over my shoulder. It was Catherine. She was wearing a stunning silver evening gown, her hair in soft waves, her makeup subtle but striking. Under the crystal chandeliers, she looked like an ethereal being from another world. Every eye in the room was on her. She scanned the crowd, found me, and walked straight toward me. Then, under the stunned gazes of everyone present, she slipped her arm through mine. Have you been waiting long? She asked, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I was floored. What was going on? This was the woman who hated public displays of affection, who always maintained a business-like distance between us at these events. No, not long. I managed to stammer. She said nothing more, simply leading me toward the center of the ballroom. I could feel the weight of 100 confused stares. Leo Vance looked like he'd just swallowed a bug. I glanced down at Catherine's hand on my arm, my mind reeling. What was she playing at? Was this some kind of power move? A way to claim her useless husband before I could embarrass her? That had to be it. For Catherine, appearances were everything. The gala got underway. As a major player in the business world, Catherine was a magnet for attention. A steady stream of people came to greet her, to toast her, to talk shop. And I became her silent, smiling accessory. Where she went, I went. When she talked, I stood beside her, nodding politely. A human handbag. I loved it. No pressure to perform, no need to think. Just smile. It was 1,000 times easier than my first life, where I was always trying to interject, to prove I wasn't just furniture. I usually just ended up making a fool of myself. Catherine, and who is this? A balding man with a sea-level gut asked, his eyes raking over me with curiosity. My husband, Ethan Miller, Catherine said coolly. Mr. Miller, a pleasure. The man's face instantly broke into a warm, sycophantic grin as he raised his glass to me. A fine-looking man. You and Catherine make a perfect pair. A match made in heaven. I gave a tight-lipped smile and clinked his glass. I'd heard that exact line 100 times before. It meant nothing. You're too kind, Mr. Wallace, Catherine replied for me. Wallace, right? I remembered him. In my first life, I waited outside his office for 3 days straight, begging for a meeting to pitch my company. He never saw me, sending his assistant down to say he was busy. Now, he was smiling at me like we were old friends. Pathetic. Catherine, I hear your company is bidding on that South Side development project, Wallace said, getting down to business. You hear correctly. Well, Wallace Industries is quite interested as well, he said with a chuckle. But of course, if you have your eye on it, we wouldn't want to get in the way. We hope you'll remember your friends down the line. I looked at his oily, flattering face and scoffed internally. Wouldn't get in the way? I remembered exactly what happened last time. This guy partnered with a rival firm to drive up the auction price, costing Catherine's company an extra $100 million. And here he was playing nice. As I was stewing, Catherine suddenly leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Run interference for me." I blinked. She'd never asked me to do that before. She always insisted that in business, there was no difference between men and women. Before I could process it, she had placed her full champagne flute in my hand. I'm sorry, Mr. Wallace, she said, her voice smooth as silk. My husband doesn't like me to drink too much. Wallace's smile froze. A ripple of surprise went through the nearby guests. And just like that, I was the center of attention. Dozens of eyes were on me, a mix of curiosity, envy, and contempt. I stood there, holding 2 glasses, feeling like an idiot. What the hell was she doing? She was throwing me to the wolves. I forced a smile at Wallace. Sorry, she's got a sensitive stomach. Doctor's orders. Then, I tilted my head back and downed both glasses of champagne. The bubbly liquid burned a hot trail down my throat. I saw Catherine's eyes widen for a fraction of a second. Wallace just looked awkward. Oh, I see. My apologies, he mumbled, finding an excuse to escape. The crowd around us dissipated. Finally, some peace. I let out a long breath, feeling the sweat on my back. What was that? I hissed at Catherine under my breath. What was what? She asked, a picture of innocence. You know, I stopped myself. What was I going to say? That I didn't want the attention? That I just wanted to be a wallflower? But her words. My husband doesn't like me to drink too much. Was she protecting me? The thought was like a small stone dropped into the placid pool of my cynicism. I looked at her, my feelings a tangled mess. I was starting to think I didn't know this woman at all. Just then, like a bad penny, Leo Vance turned up again. He was holding 2 glasses of red wine. He offered one to me. Ethan, it's been a while. How about a real drink? His smile was pure malice. I was about to refuse, but Catherine spoke first. He's had enough, she said, her voice cold. Leo chuckled. Come on, Catherine, don't be like that. A little friendly drink between men. He's not that fragile, is he? The challenge was obvious. I bristled, but before I could say anything, Catherine's hand found mine. Her skin was cool to the touch. He's my husband. Of course I'm protective of him, she said, looking Leo dead in the eye. Her voice was quiet but carried the force of a battering ram. You, on the other hand, should probably be more concerned with your own company. I hear you've leveraged everything on that new AI project. If something were to go wrong, I imagine you'd have bigger problems than who's having a drink. Her words hit Leo like a physical blow. The color drained from his face. How did you know that? He stammered. There are no secrets in this town, Catherine said with a frosty smile. Then she squeezed my hand and led me away, leaving Leo standing there, slack-jawed and pale. She led me through the crowd and out of the ballroom into the cool night air. The fresh breeze helped clear my head. Just now, I started looking at her, unsure how to phrase the question. What about it? She asked, turning to face me. How did you know about Leo's project? The details. Business intelligence, she said simply. Somehow, I didn't think it was that simple. Her words hadn't been a casual jab. They had been a targeted strike. It felt like she was defending my honor. The thought was so ridiculous, I almost dismissed it. This was Catherine Reed, the Ice Queen. Why would she stick up for me against Leo Vance? Ours was a marriage of convenience. I must have had too much to drink. Back at the penthouse, the alcohol hit me hard. I was dizzy and unsteady on my feet. Catherine supported me, dumping me onto the living room sofa. Drink this, she said, handing me a glass of water. I gulped it down gratefully. My stomach settled a bit. Thanks, I mumbled. She didn't reply, just sat in an armchair across from me, watching me. Her gaze was so intense it made me squirm. What are you looking at? I shifted uncomfortably. Ethan, she said suddenly, why did you tell Wallace I couldn't drink? I froze. How was I supposed to answer that? Tell her I was just playing along with her weird script? Is my stomach really that sensitive? She pressed. I was completely lost. How would I know? We'd been married for a year, and the number of times we'd actually shared a bed, I could count on one hand. Her assistant probably knew more about her health than I did. I stammered, scrambling for an excuse. Finally, I just went with it. I guessed. You guessed. One perfect eyebrow arched. Yeah, I nodded, digging myself deeper. I mean, you work such long hours, you probably skip meals. That's bad for your stomach. And alcohol is also bad for your stomach. So, my explanation trailed off. It sounded ridiculous even to me. And yet, Catherine seemed to buy it. Or at least, she pretended to. The corner of her mouth tilted upward. It was a tiny movement, almost imperceptible, but it was undeniably a smile. It was the first time in 2 lifetimes I had ever seen her truly smile. It was just a ghost of a smile, but it was like the sun breaking through on a winter morning, melting the frost from her features. I stared, mesmerized. So that's what she looked like when she smiled. From now on, she said, looking at me, you're in charge of running interference for me. Huh, I was still lost in that smile. What? Her cool mask was back in place. You have a problem with that? No, of course not. Happy to do it, I said, nodding vigorously. This was an order from the boss, after all. Playing a human shield at parties? Easy. Way better than trying to launch a company. Good, she said, standing up. Get some rest. And with that, she went upstairs. I collapsed back onto the sofa, replaying that smile in my head. A strange, fluttery feeling started in my chest. Maybe this woman wasn't so bad after all, and she'd stood up for me to Leo Vance. I still didn't understand why, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. Could it be that she actually... I cut that thought off right there. Get a grip, Ethan. Don't get ahead of yourself. She's a billionaire CEO. You're a self-declared bum. She had her reasons, and they probably had nothing to do with you, right? That was it. I shook my head, clearing away the fantasy. My job was to be a good slacker and hold on tight to my meal ticket. That was all that mattered. The next few days were blissful. My life fell into a simple, wonderful rhythm. Video games and movies by day. By night, Catherine would come home, and we'd have dinner together. Most of the time, I did the talking and she did the listening, but the atmosphere was 100 times better than in our first life. At least now, she didn't look at me with that disappointed, "You were such a failure" expression. Sometimes she'd even give me one of those small, fleeting smiles that tied my stomach in knots. I was starting to realize that I actually liked this life. Money, free time, and a beautiful wife. Wasn't this the dream I'd been too stupid to appreciate the first time around? One afternoon, I was sprawled on the sofa, eating potato chips and watching an old movie when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A frantic female voice came through. Hello, is this Ethan? It is. Who's this? It's Chloe. Chloe Evans. You don't remember me? Chloe. It took me a moment to dredge the name from the recesses of my memory. A classmate from college. And my ex-girlfriend. Well, in my head anyway. I chased her for 4 years, and she'd never said yes. After graduation, she moved abroad, and we lost touch. What do you want? I asked, my voice flat. I had zero feelings left for her. I'm back in the country, she said. I heard. You got married? Yeah. To Catherine Reed? From the Reed Corporation? She sounded incredulous. That's the one. The line went silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with tears. Ethan, I'm in trouble. What kind of trouble? My dad's company. The financing fell through. It's about to go bankrupt, she sobbed. I heard you're doing really well now. Could you help me? I almost laughed out loud. Me? Doing well? Every dollar to my name came from Catherine. Sorry, I said bluntly. I can't help you. I'm broke. How is that possible? She shot back. You married Catherine Reed. You must be rich. My wife's money is her money, not mine, I said. I'm just the guy who lives in her house. You're asking the wrong person. Ethan, she shrieked. How can you say that? How can you be so pathetic? Have you forgotten everything you used to tell me? You were going to build an empire. You were going to give me the world. People change, I said tiredly. No, this isn't you, she insisted. You're just saying this to get back at me, aren't you? Because I didn't say yes back then. I was done with this conversation. I have to go. I hung up and immediately blocked her number. I leaned back on the sofa, feeling a strange mix of pity and annoyance. After all these years, Chloe was still living in a fantasy. Did she really think I was the same lovesick puppy who used to follow her around campus? Just then, I heard the front door open. It was Catherine, home earlier than usual. Hey, I said, sitting up. She said nothing, just kicked off her heels and walked toward me. Her face was like stone. What's wrong? I asked. Trouble at the office? She didn't answer. Instead, she tossed a manila envelope onto the coffee table in front of me. See for yourself. Confused, I opened it. It was full of photos. Photos of me, with Chloe. The two of us were in a coffee shop. The angle was intimate, making it look like we were deep in a heartfelt conversation. In one shot, she was gripping my hand, her face streaked with tears. My own expression, in that context, looked like one of deep concern and affection. I stared at them, completely stunned. When did this happen? I hadn't seen Chloe in person since college. What is this? I asked Catherine. You, meeting your ex-girlfriend in secret. Her voice was dangerously quiet. I denied it instantly. I haven't seen her. Really? A bitter, humorless laugh escaped her lips. So these are photoshopped. I had no defense. The photos looked real. There were no obvious signs of manipulation. But I knew I hadn't been there. What the hell was going on? My mind was a chaotic mess. Ethan, Catherine said, her eyes filled with a chilling disappointment. I thought you changed. I thought you were actually happy to just be here with me. But you're the same as you always were. A liar. I'm not lying. I said, my voice rising in panic. Catherine, you have to believe me. Believe you? She laughed again, a sound completely devoid of warmth. Why should I? Because you say so? Without another word, she turned and went upstairs. A moment later, I heard the sharp slam of our bedroom door. I sat alone in the living room, a cold dread seeping into my bones. It was over. Everything was ruined. The fragile truce we'd built had just been shattered. Things were worse now than they'd ever been. I looked at the photos on the table, and a hot surge of anger washed over me. Chloe. This had to be her. What was she trying to accomplish? I grabbed my phone, went in my blocked list, and unblocked her number. I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Ethan, she said, her voice laced with triumph. The photos, Chloe. That was you, wasn't it? I asked, cutting straight to the chase. What photos? She played dumb. Don't lie to me. I roared. Why would you do this? Why? She laughed. I just wanted to show you that the woman you married doesn't trust you at all. It took almost nothing to make her turn on you. What do you want from me? I want you to come back to me, she said. I know you still love me, Ethan. You only married her for her money, to spite me. You don't love her. You're wrong, I said coldly. Whether I love her or not is none of your business. But what you did today, it just makes me sick. Ethan, This is your last warning, Chloe. Stay away from me, and stay away from my wife, or you'll regret it. I hung up. I sank back into the sofa cushions, feeling helpless. There was no reasoning with someone like her. She was lost in her own delusion. The real problem was Catherine. How could I prove this was a setup? Those photos. Where did they come from? I thought back. The coffee shop and the pictures looked familiar. I had been there last week to pick up a document for Catherine. The place had been packed, and I'd had to wait for a while. Could Chloe have been there too? Did she take pictures of me sitting alone and then Photoshop herself in? It was entirely possible. The woman was more conniving than I'd ever realized. I found the coffee shop's number online and called. Hi, I was wondering if you have security cameras in your store. We do, sir. Great. Could you check the footage from last Wednesday between 3 and 4 p.m.? I'm sorry, sir. We can only release footage to the police. I hung up, my head throbbing. Without the security footage, I had no proof. Was our marriage really going to end over this stupid, pathetic lie? I wasn't going to let that happen. I didn't know when it had happened, but somewhere along the line, this marriage had stopped being a business transaction for me. I'd started to care what Catherine thought. I cared when she was happy and when she was sad. I liked her smiles, and I liked the feeling of safety I felt when she was home. I couldn't give that up. I stood, took a deep breath, and walked upstairs. I had to make her listen. I knocked on the bedroom door. No answer. Catherine, open the door. We need to talk. Still nothing. Catherine, I know you're in there. Please, just let me explain. It's not what it looks like. You have 3 minutes. Her voice came from behind the door, cold and clipped. I felt a rush of relief. If she was willing to listen, I still had a chance. I quickly collected my thoughts and told her everything. My theory about Chloe, the coffee shop, the doctored photos. So that's what happened. I finished. She faked the whole thing just to drive a wedge between us. I held my breath, waiting. The silence on the other side of the door was absolute. Then, after what felt like an eternity, I heard a soft click as the lock disengaged. The door opened. Catherine stood there, her face unreadable. Her eyes were slightly red and swollen. She'd been crying. The sight of it was like a punch to the gut. Is that the truth? She asked. Every word, I said, holding up 3 fingers. If I'm lying, may I be struck by lightning and hit by a bus. Her expression was complicated, a mix of emotions I couldn't begin to decipher. I believe you, she said finally. I blinked. You believe me? I could hardly believe my own ears. Yes, she nodded, but not because of your explanation or your ridiculous oath. Then why? Because Chloe came to see me today. What? I was stunned. She brought the photos with her, Catherine said. She told me to leave you. She said you were still in love with her and only married me for my money. That crazy. I was shaking with rage. But Catherine looked me right in the eye. She said she didn't care about the money. She just wanted you. She offered me $5 million to let you go. I was speechless. $5 million? Where'd she get that kind of money? I asked her where the money came from, Catherine continued. She said she sold the house her father left her. I had no words. Chloe was certifiably insane. What did you say to her? I asked. A small, cold smile touched Catherine's lips. I told her my husband isn't for sale. Not for $5 million. Not for $500 million. My heart skipped a beat. A wave of warmth spread through my entire body. My husband. She called me her husband. And Catherine's eyes took on a sly glint. I told her that every asset you have is in my name. That your monthly allowance is subject to my approval. That you are, in no uncertain terms, a kept man. After that, her face went white. She mumbled something and left. Looking at her then, I suddenly found Catherine read adorable. My Ice Queen wife had a wonderfully devious side. So, I asked tentatively, "You're not mad at me anymore?" She shot me a glare. "Who said I'm not mad?" she sniffed. "You're sleeping on the sofa tonight." And with that, she slammed the door in my face again. I rubbed my nose, a wide, goofy grin spreading across my face. Sleeping on the sofa was fine by me. As long as she believed me, as long as she was still willing to talk to me, I'd sleep on the floor. Humming happily, I went downstairs to get a blanket from the hall closet. Tonight, the sofa was going to feel like the most comfortable bed in the world. The next morning, I woke to the smell of bacon. I opened my eyes and saw Catherine in the kitchen, wearing an apron, moving with a quiet efficiency. The morning sun streamed through the window, bathing her in a golden light. The scene was so beautiful, so domestic, it felt like a dream. I rubbed my eyes, sure I was still asleep. Catherine could cook? Since when? You're awake? She glanced over her shoulder at me. Go wash up. Breakfast is almost ready. I stumbled off the sofa and into the bathroom. When I came out, 2 plates were set on the island. Scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and glasses of milk. It looked better than anything I could have ordered. I sat down and took a bite of toast. It was perfectly crispy. Is it good? She asked. It's amazing, I said with genuine admiration. I had no idea you could cook. I learned a while ago, she said, her tone casual. I looked at her, and a thought suddenly occurred to me. Did you used to cook for me often? She didn't answer, just took a sip of her milk. But I saw the faint blush creeping up her neck, and I knew the answer. My heart ached. In my first life, I was so consumed with my work that I was rarely home. I never paid attention to the details of our domestic life. I always just assumed the housekeeper made our meals. But it had been her. Every night, she had cooked, waiting for a husband who rarely came home. A crushing wave of guilt washed over me. I'm sorry, I said, my voice low. For what? She asked, looking up. For before. I didn't know how to finish. Let the past be the past, she interrupted gently. We're here now. I looked at her, my eyes starting to burn. Why was she always so decent? She had every right to be angry, to hold a grudge. But she didn't. She just forgave me. Catherine, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for believing in me. She looked surprised for a moment, and then she smiled. This time, it wasn't one of her small, hesitant smiles. It was a genuine, radiant smile that lit up her entire face. It was like spring flowers and summer breezes, a beautiful, dazzling thing that took my breath away. Eat, she said softly. It's getting cold. I looked down at my plate and started to eat, my heart full and warm. I made a decision right then and there. From now on, I wasn't just going to be a good slacker. I was going to be a good husband. I was going to treat her right, better than she'd ever been treated before. I was going to make her the happiest woman in the world. I didn't have any money or any great ambition, but I had a heart that was, to my own profound surprise, falling in love with her. And that was enough. End.